Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome to our regular weekly Friday reminder. My name is Ibrahim. I am the Joint Chair of the GLD Muslim Network. Before we begin, can I ask you all to mute your phones if you haven't already done so? This session will last approximately 30 minutes. If you do have any questions or suggestions for future topics, do please get in touch via Sidra using hashtag Friday reminder. We will do our best to answer as many questions as possible at the end of the session. For today's reminder, I am pleased to introduce Sister Lady Sidra Naeem, who, mashallah, has been honoured with many titles, including Deputy Lord Lieutenant, the Queen's Representative for the County of Essex. She is a qualified teacher, Islamic scholar and chaplain in the educational, health and retail sectors. She was awarded recognition and nominated for outstanding voluntary work in Muslim and non-Muslim communities in numerous projects across England since 9/11. These included training delivered to the police and airports on Dispelling Myths to eradicate Islamophobia. Do check out her YouTube channel, which is posted on Slido. Today's topic is, what does Islam say about terrorism, extremism, war and tolerance? I'm sure you agree this is a very interesting topic. Hope you find today's session useful. Over to you, sister.
Jazakallah khair for inviting me to speak to the Government Muslim Network. I feel privileged to be part of today's session. As you mentioned, the talk is on what does Islam say about terrorism, extremism, war and tolerance. Now, did you know that before Islam came, it is then that all of these things were happening? Terrorism was actually happening before Islam came. Islam actually came to get rid of terrorism. So before Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came, there was ignorance and darkness, barbarism and ruthlessness. There was persecution of women, usury, exploitation. There was fear and terror. There was class and color discrimination. But after Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came, he brought knowledge and light, kindness and mercy, women's status and rights, justice and fairness, peace and security, love and brotherhood, taught us also how to respect all the other religions. He preached to set free the captives. He gave animal rights. He visited the sick, a huge network of things. In our religion, we believe that all mankind is from Adam, so we are all descendants from the same ancestor, making us brothers and sisters of one another. All the prophets and messengers from Adam to the present day were all from different nations. Moses was from Egypt. Jesus spoke Aramaic. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was born in Arabia. So no one was British, and yet we happily follow all their religions. Also, it says in the Quran, O mankind, indeed we have created you from male and female and made you peoples and tribes so that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. Indeed, Allah is knowing and acquainted. That's in chapter 49, verse 13 of the Quran. This implies that there is no place for racism in Islam. Islam rejects certain individuals or nations being favored because of their wealth, power or race. And God created human beings as equals who are distinguished from each other only on the basis of their faith and piety. So Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, preached that everyone is equal no matter what race, gender, wealth and social status. And all mankind is from Adam and Eve. Did you know that just before Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, passed away, in his last sermon, his last few words again showed equality. All mankind is from Adam and Eve, and Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, nor a non-Arab has any superiority over an Arab. Also, white has no superiority over black, nor a black has any superiority over white, except by piety and good action. And that was actually his last words, which actually shows the importance of unity and peace. He also chose an African slave to give the call to the Muslim prayer, who was the poorest and darkest man amongst his companions. That was actually Bilal. He also showed us so many examples, really, of tolerance. There was one lady who mocked the Prophet. She would throw rubbish outside his house, and she would do this every day, yet he never said anything to her. And then one day when he came out of his house, there was no rotten meat there, no rubbish. So he asked about her, and everybody said she's not well, she's at home, she's not feeling well. He actually went to her house and he asked her how she was, and she actually then took the Shahada and became Muslim, because she said to him that if this is what your religion preaches, to be nice to even people who are horrible to you, then I want to be like you, I want to be a Muslim. So he actually showed tolerance in his behavior. So it's very, very good to be a good role model. He inspired people to care about health, human rights, coexistence, women's rights, animal welfare, charity, equality, social justice, and education. Also, when the Hijra happened, there's another example. People were out to murder him, yet he quietly ran away. He didn't go to kill anybody. He actually then went to quietly to Medina, so that he was away from danger. So there is great tolerance in Islam. There are so many other things also, some myths that we need to dispel. So there is a very big misconception that Islam was spread by the sword. Muslims, did you know, were the lords of Arabia for 1400 years. And for a few years, the British ruled, and for a few years, the French ruled. Yet overall, the Muslims ruled Arabia for 1400 years. Yet today, did you know, there are 14 million Arabs who are Coptic Christian Arabs. And those are Christians since generations. Yet Muslims have never used the sword ever to fight any of those people. And did you know also that in the Middle East, countries such as Egypt, Morocco, Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan, they are all thriving on Christian and Jewish populations for the over past 13 centuries. Indonesia is a country that has the maximum number of Muslims in the world. The majority of the people in Malaysia are Muslims. But did you know there was never an army that was sent to Indonesia and Malaysia to fight ever? So Islam was not spread there by the sword. Also the east coast of Africa, Islam spread rapidly there. And there was never a sword ever in that region that ever spread Islam there. It was spread naturally through people and their good deeds. In 1492, Spanish monarchs decided to expel all Jews from Spain, and the Ottoman Sultan Bayezid II ordered his navy, under the protocols of Islam, to rescue persecuted Jews and offer them safety in the Ottoman Empire. So, did you also know that there has never been a Holocaust in the Middle East? The Holocaust actually happened here in Europe. So also, is Islam respectful of other beliefs? Muslims ruled Spain for 800 years and never used the sword to force people to convert during this time, and up to when they were finally forced out. The non-Muslims there were treated with the utmost of respect and flourishing communities. Did you know that the golden age of Islam actually happened in that era as well? Muslims also ruled India for 1,000 years. Now, if they wanted to, they could have converted each and one of those, Hindus especially, to Islam. Hinduism is actually the opposite of Islam. Yet, did you know, even today, India has got more Hindus living in it than Muslims. 80% of India is actually Hinduism, which is classed under paganism. Also, did you know that Islamic law protects the status of minorities, and people, non-Muslims are actually allowed to practice their own laws and also build their own places of worship as well there. Islamic law permits non-Muslims to set up their own courts and implement their own family laws. Did you know that in Islam, wherever we are living, have to follow the law of the land, yet non-Muslims, if they live in Islamic countries, they are allowed to set up their own courts and implement their own family laws. This is how much tolerance Islam gives. The Quran says, "Let there be no compulsion in religion. Truth stands out clear from error," which means also there are no missionaries in Islam either. Also, extremism. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ always told us to follow the middle path. He pronounced a firm warning, never be extreme regarding religion. Many nations have been destroyed before you only because of extremism in religion. The Quran also says, keep to the right course as you have been commanded, and also those who turn with you to God and do not exceed the bounds. He sees what you do. That is actually in the Quran, chapter 11, verse 112. So too extreme and it's hard to follow, too lenient and there are no boundaries. So we are actually encouraged to follow the middle path. Also, it says in the Quran, if anyone kills an innocent person, it will be as if he has killed the whole of mankind. And if anyone saved a life, it would be as if he has saved the whole of mankind. That's in chapter 5, verse 32. Another saying by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is do not cause harm nor respond to harm with harm. Now, what does Islam say about war? War is the last resort and is subject to the rigorous conditions laid down by the sacred law. Islam only permits fighting in self-defense. And as Muslims see it, injustice would be triumphant in the world if good people were not prepared to fight for righteous cause. So it lays down strict rules of combat. And did you know those include prohibitions against harming civilians, and homes or lands of the enemy is also forbidden. And also we are told not to kill a child or a woman because they are the future generation, being mothers, nor an aged man. Bring no harm to the trees, nor burn them with fire, especially those which are fruitful. Slay not in any of the enemy's flock, save for your food. So crops and things are also not allowed to be destroyed. If you pass by people who have devoted their lives to monastic services, leave them alone. So even though monasteries are not allowed in Islam, we're allowed to practice our religion throughout our lives. Hermits are not allowed to be killed in their caves, or monasteries are not even allowed to be destroyed. We're not allowed to kill a priest while they're running away or fighting you. Don't destroy a worship place. Don't destroy buildings. We are not allowed to kill sick people. That includes mentally as well as physically ill. Did you know we are also not allowed to destroy any rivers by poisoning them or destroy any wells either? The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, instructed soldiers to forgive and release captives. Do not kill anybody who has surrendered. Be good to the prisoners and feed them. Don't kill anybody who has run away. Do not enforce Islam. And do not disfigure the dead. That includes mutilation of any bodies. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, commanded the Muslims to treat the prisoners of war with great kindness. Suicide is forbidden in Islam. First of all, there is great punishment for somebody who commits suicide, because in hellfire they will reenact that suicide again and again. Also, by committing suicide, you are saying that Allah is not in charge of your destiny, and you are actually then saying that you're in charge of your own destiny in taking your own life, which Allah has given to you in the first place. So it does say, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, none of you should wish for death because of a calamity befalling him, but if he has to wish for death, he should say, oh Allah, keep me alive as long as life is better for me, and let me die if death is better for me. Now, there is a big problem with martyrs. It tells you also in the Quran as well that basically it says that Ka'b bin Malik narrated that Allah's messenger said, verily a believer's soul is turned into a bird that eats from the trees of Jannah until Allah sends it to his body on the day that it will be resurrected. That's in Malik and Ahmed. And in the Quran it says, and never think of those who've been killed in the cause of Allah as dead. Rather they're alive with their Lord receiving provision. So the prophets, the martyrs, and the most righteous believers do have a special well-earned status in the hereafter. But did you know that there is a very big misconception amongst non-Muslims about the fact that if you die a martyr, then you go to heaven in the form of green birds? The verse in the Quran that was revealed was actually after the battle, some of the battles where thousands and thousands of Muslims died. And there were many widows that were left there and many families that were left destitute because the main structure of their families had gone. So the verse of the Quran that was revealed was actually to reassure them that do not worry, all those people that have died in the war, they have gone to Jannah in the form of green birds. And it's under that category, that is the context in which that ayah of the Quran was revealed, not under the context that people can go about doing extremism and killing themselves and then go to Jannah in the form of green birds. Because that, first of all, you're destroying other people's lives by killing them, and by killing an innocent life, you're killing the whole of mankind. So you're doing that as well. And then you're taking charge of your own destiny, which you're not allowed to do, which means you will not go into Jannah in the form of green birds. So suicide is basically haram, and it is actually from shaitan. Shaitan wants you to do that because that is one of the criteria under which you enter hellfire. Now, jihad is a very misunderstood and overused term. The word jihad just literally means struggle. So jihad as an Islamic concept can be on a personal inner level, struggle against evil within oneself. It can be struggle for decency and goodness on the social level, and struggle on the battlefield. So even smiling in tough times is jihad. Even wearing a hijab outside for some of the sisters is jihad. You know, even studying in tough times is jihad. You know, calling people to Islam is jihad as well. So it's not just holy war.
Jihad in the news is often translated to mean holy war, but holy and war are both English words with Latin origins, so it probably doesn't mean exactly that. According to Google Translate, the individual words exist separately in Arabic. So what is jihad? Does it refer to a set of conflicts, like how the Crusades refer to a set of Christian holy wars? Nope, it does not. So why do they need the extra word jihad to describe a holy war? Does it even mean holy war at all? Well, the short answer is no. What jihad really means is struggle. It's a major religious duty that many consider to be the unofficial sixth pillar of Islam, right below self-control, giving to the poor, and visiting Mecca. Technically, jihad means a struggle in the way of Allah. Fringe radical militant groups think that attacking the West is part of that struggle, but the majority of Muslims don't. Most of them are actually opposed to using the word jihad in that way because it associates the word with terrorism. So what does jihad mean to them? Well, in Islam, there are two types of jihad, the outer and the inner. The outer is the kind that defends Islam against outside aggression, like they did in the Crusades. The inner represents the internal spiritual struggle to seek self-improvement in the way of Allah. So basically, it's the struggle to be a better Muslim, both spiritually and in practice. The following passage, which is from a highly debated Islamic text called the Hadith, sums it up pretty nicely. In it, Muhammad says to a band of returning warriors, "You have come from the lesser jihad to the greater jihad, the striving of a servant of Allah against his own desires." So despite the negative attention it gets, jihad can refer to some really wonderful things. There's even a website called myjihad.org that highlights good jihads, and it's part of an entire online movement devoted to taking the word back from Islamic extremists. Even Twitter has gotten in on it with a hashtag #myjihad, where people tweet about their good deeds or positive struggles to help better themselves and their communities. Like, "My jihad is to balance work and family life." "My jihad is to challenge society norms and work towards improving our culture." "My jihad is to keep the air in my country clean." And finally, "My jihad is trying to appreciate the jihad in a place where the jihad is misunderstood." So see, it's really not as scary a word as you might think. It doesn't mean holy war, and if that hashtag is any indication, it has the power to change the world.
So the next part of my talk is talking about some of the laws within Islam, which are in Sharia law, which are actually looked down upon by non-Muslims. I thought that also would be very useful. So capital punishment is something which is in the Quran. So it says, "Stand out firmly for justice as witnesses to God, even as against yourself or your partners or your kin, and whether it be against rich or poor." So if you think about it, capital punishment is also in the Old Testament, in the Bible. And it's actually, if you go to the London dungeons, there is actually a big plaque there showing in the olden days that if you stole, for example, a piece of bread, your hands would get cut off. If you kill somebody, you will get hung in public. These are all things really to, it's there as a deterrent to stop you doing it in the first place. If you think of schools in the olden days, there were actually things in the policies that you would get caned if you do such and such. And because of that, students never did it in the first place because they were scared. So the crime didn't even happen in the first place, let alone you even giving the punishment. And capital punishment works in the same way. Because you know you will get punished in public in front of everybody, very rarely will you do that crime in the first place. And if you do, it will be a sign for hundreds then to see who are watching you not to do that crime either. So capital punishment is there in all religions. It's in the Torah and it's in the Bible, and it's to stop you doing the sin in the first place. And Sharia law does state that for murder and for adultery and for treason and for rape as well, because these are huge major crimes. If you know, for example, you know that you've committed adultery and you're going to be stoned to death according to Allah's law, which is in Muslim book 17, Hadith 4192, you're not going to do it in the first place. The capital punishment for rapists, again, you know, if you think about it, if your own, for example, your own sister got raped, what would you do? Would you want the person who did it to be punished? Would you put him to death? A lot of people would say, yes, you would. So again, in countries where capital punishment doesn't exist, there are huge high rates of rape. And I have got statistics for anybody who wants to know them. Now, treason is another one. Treason is actually in our religion. And did you know it was there for a reason? Now, Allah doesn't tell us to harm anyone if they stop believing in him, because we know that Allah has already told us in the Quran that there is no compulsion in religion. So the punishment for treason, did you know, was first instituted by Allah during the time of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to stop the undermining of the nascent Islamic community by non-Muslims converting to Islam and then apostatizing shortly after, so that they can help with information, for example, the enemies of Muslims who are at war with them. So what happened was, for example, during a war, a non-Muslim may stand up and say, okay, I'm Muslim now, don't kill me. and the Muslims wouldn't kill them because they've become Muslim. And then later on, they would be pretending they're Muslim, but then give off like a spy to the non-Muslims. And then they would change back again. So this was actually there to stop the religion being used and used as a mockery. Now, if you look at treason, that has been in this country as well. If you look at, for example, Guy Fawkes, he did treason. He was Catholic and he tried to change the religion in the country. And, you know, that's when he was put to death. So treason exists in all the religions, but specifically in Islam, treason, the rules of treason were released specifically for those people who were making a mockery out of the religion, and they were pretending they were Muslim when they were not, and giving away things like spies do, or doing it just so they were not going to get killed in war, and then change back again afterwards. So there is terrorism in no religion. There is actually no religion at all in this world that promotes terrorism. And if you look at people like Ku Klux Klan, they were representative of Christians. Hitler was a representative of Christians as well, because he was Christian. But that doesn't mean that they are religious. So ISIS, for example, Muslims believe that they are not Muslim, because if they were Muslim, they would not, first of all, be trying to change their religion in the land that they live in, or they would be following the law of the land that they live in. They would not be killing innocent lives, because killing one person is not killing the whole of mankind, and they would not be committing suicide or suicide bombing either. To a certain extent, the media does misrepresent Muslims a lot. Some politicians, religious leaders, and media found an ideal scapegoat in Islam. And if you think about it, by associating Islam with the inhumane acts of a handful, they are successful in driving a larger number of people to vote for them. Their newspaper sales and television programs go up as well. And basically, by associating Islam with inhumane acts of a handful, they have been successful in that. A tabloid guide to an increased ratings would be a gunman story, really. And, you know, Muslims actually, because it's the in religion at the moment, is the one that's always attacked. Unfortunately, some religions are in the law where you are not allowed to speak against them. But with Muslims, there is no law yet at the moment that says we can't speak against Muslims, which is why Muslims get really the whole tail end of everything. So I think that is something just for the future, really, as this is a talk for the government. But Muslims must stand against terrorism, persecution, killing of innocent lives. We must tell everybody exactly the way that what the religion says, like I have been saying today. And we need to promote good role models. How many sportsmen are there out there who, you know, have contributed so much really to society? And there are actually more and more people now coming out as mayors. And like the brother introduced me earlier, I'm a Deputy Lord Lieutenant and a Muslim, and I go everywhere with my hijab on. That promotes myself and lots of other people as good role models. So that then brings me to the end, and I'd like to open up the floor to any questions.
I look through the questions now. We have a couple.
Yes.
First question is, what practical steps can we take to tackle Islamophobia?
A couple of things. One is to try and portray Islam in a good way yourself by being a very, very good role model. So you need to be good role models to show people that this is what Islam is. Because some people, they will portray all of their findings completely on what they hear on the media. They need real life people to show them that actually all Muslims are not terrorists. So role modeling is very good. But also, if you come across certain things within your workplaces, it's best for you to dispel those myths straight away. So, for example, I talked about capital punishment and treason. I spoke about all the lovely laws under which only we can do war with people, and destiny, about suicide bombing and things like that. It's best to dispel those myths then and there, so that at least that person then can't spread those myths along the line to other people. So those are my two ideas. If you've got the capacity, do talks like I do. I've done so much training for the police. I'm doing some now for all of you. I'm on the television, I'm on the BBC as a good role model. All of that really, really helps. And if you do something good, try and get into the newspapers as well, so that the world can know that there are good Muslims out there. Okay, hope that answers your question.
Okay, the second question is, how can we prevent the infighting among Muslim communities?
Okay, is that, yes, so again, did you know that fighting within our own communities is to do with arrogance and jealousy and envy? And all of these are actually from Shaitan, all of these traits. Shaitan wanted to be better than everybody. He was arrogant, he was jealous of Adam. And we need to understand, first of all, destiny. If Allah has given somebody else better qualities than us, then Allah chose that person to be better than us. Someone may be more intelligent, they may have more religion in them, all of these things. The key really to stop all the fighting amongst us is religion. If you come towards Islam, everybody will become humble, and you will wish for yourself what you wish for others. And there's many, many sayings and examples of the Prophet here, which says that we should be humble, and we should, what we wish for others, what we wish for ourselves, we should wish for others. And that is really the key to stopping all fighting, you know, and knowing the religion as well. Okay.
Okay, another question is, do you think we should use the media to counter Islamophobia rhetoric?
Yes, in a good way, yes. We should go on the radio, we should go on the television to portray good things about Islam, show ourselves as good role models. We should get into newspapers as well. And, you know, it can be very, very hard sometimes. I mean, when I went to visit the Queen and I sent in an article to the local newspaper, they did turn around and say to me, good news is no news when it comes to Islam. And that really upset me a lot. So I did complain to the manager. And then in the next couple of weeks, they did put the article up. So we need to fight against anybody who doesn't portray Islam in a good way. And we should also try and make sure that the people who do go on some of these programs, that maybe if we can do it, who are moderate Muslims, because what I find is when Panorama and all these programs come on BBC, they always choose the worst people who portray Islam in such a bad way, not necessarily the correct way. And that's where the problems are, because that is what is then going around to mainstream media. So we need to try and get rid of those people and try and go ourselves, which is why whenever I'm asked to do something, I'm usually the first one up there, because I feel I do portray Islam in a good way. And I'd rather that than an extremist person going on there spoiling it for everyone else as well. We do need to speak up. We need to do speeches. After there is a terrorist attack, we need to speak up. We need to be in the churches. We need to speak up and say, this is not what our religion says. And what that person did was wrong. Because a lot of Muslims, they do stay quiet and they don't say anything. And that is not good. We do need to speak up. Okay, any more questions?
Okay, I think those are all the questions that I have at the moment.
Okay.
I'll hand you back to our host.
Okay, thank you very much.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Farhan. Jazakallah khair, Sidra, for doing this talk for us. I'm sure you will all agree a fascinating perspective on this topic. I hope you enjoyed this session and I look forward to welcoming you again next Friday. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.